Hey everybody, I just have a bit of a quick update today. I was on vacation for the last 10 days and then I'm actually working this week and then I'm on vacation next week as well. And then I'll be back to the regular routine for a very long time, no more vacation time. I'm kind of taking a lot of my vacation close together this summer. So I haven't really had much hobbying time lately. I have been reading quite a bit while on vacation and away, visiting family and things, but then also just sort of watching videos. And I mean, a number of you might have noticed who are subscribed to me, and I'm subscribed to you, like that I've been commenting on videos while away, but I've not been home. I'll just mention a couple of things that I've picked up while I was away. This is something. The Warhammer 40k Adeptus Mechanicus Tech Priest is a book. It's still sealed in that I'd picked up. I had gotten the limited edition version of the Skitarii one that was put out before it, so this is book 2 in a series. I got the regular version this time. The book is pretty much identical. The limited edition has a nice slipcover and a nice book liner with some colored photography and in it, in the middle, which is nice. It was a nice book, but I didn't feel the need to buy the limited edition for the second one. So I'm looking forward to reading that. Right now I'm reading War of the Fang. I'm not sure if I've showed that on the channel that I'd picked that up, but it's sort of another book in the Thousand Suns Space Wolves saga collection of books. It also has The Hunt for Magnus in it, a short story in the beginning. So I'm currently reading that while on vacation. I'm mostly through it. While I was away, when I was at a mall, I happened to be a Games Workshop store in the city that I was in. I was in Edmonton visiting my wife's family, and I had picked up some black works. I've always wanted to include these, even though I'm primarily doing a Goblin army. I did want to do some black works, and so I'm looking forward to painting those up at one point. I really liked the sprue. I took out the models and looked at it. I really liked the size of the miniatures. It might just be because I'm used to painting Eldar, and even the Space Marines don't really approach the size of these guys. They're just huge. So I really like the look of them. They just look really tough. So I'm looking forward to painting those. Now I ended up picking up this Wood Elf Sorceress. I'm not sure if it's called a Wood Elf Spellweaver with staff, but my daughter, as I mentioned, is doing Wood Elves, and just starting today, we've actually, we just got back into town yesterday, and this morning we worked on taking the Wood Elf Way Watchers off of the sprue and starting to model those to prepare them to paint. Now my daughter has done some of the Space Marines, like the beginner set where there's 3 Space Marines in it, and they're mainly put together. I think you just put like a bolter on and put them on the base, but there's not a lot of modeling to do. So it was an opportunity with the Glade Guard. Maybe they're not Way Watchers, maybe they're Glade Guard. There's like 16 in a box. It's an opportunity for me to show her all of the steps that you need to go through, the cutting, the sanding where you cut, and then cleaning up the mold lines and the gluing and then the positioning. And these models are quite good for that because there are moving parts. They're not snap fit. One of the things I was quite impressed with is my daughter's attention to detail when it came to the mold lines. I really wanted her to get an appreciation for what the mold line was and how to get rid of it, and just the amount of work that goes in to spending the time ahead of time to prepare the model. Now that's not to say that I haven't missed the occasional mold line and don't slack at times myself, but I really want to teach her the right way of doing it, and then she can decide how much she wants to pay attention to detail later on her own, her own projects later. And so we're kind of working through that. Now this was an opportunity. She really wanted this model, but also we weren't getting started because she was busy with lots of other things with her Way Watchers before, or her Glade Guard before vacation. So I got this as sort of like incentive for her to work towards something. Whether that's right or wrong. She's really excited to get this, and so as soon as we got back, she wanted to start her Glade Guard. And so this is Finecast, which will be another lesson for her in of itself. It is going to be, I am a little concerned as to how brittle this is with this kind of model, and so we're going to have to protect it somehow, and I've talked to her about that. She's played HeroClix in the past, and she's got like tackle boxes and various things to store, and she's never had a problem with that, but this is going to require a little bit more protection. Of course, I still have my Indians for musket and tomahawks that will be coming up in the future. And then what I worked on this morning after I was working on the Glade Guard with my daughter is I finished assembling a bunch of goblins with shields and spears. These ones were already archers, and I think I showed them in the past. They're actually, I cleaned these up. They were already painted, and I stripped them. But these ones I've actually built from scratch because I'd purchased. I got these used too, and they're all spare parts. You can see there's different kinds of colored plastic. I think during the release of this they must have switched their plastic at one point, because I've got a bit of both, like of dark gray and then this light gray stuff. And then I've got my wood elf, my goblin shaman there. So I think for goblins I'm going to be working on these guys next as far as painting, and then after these guys I'll probably do the wolf riders, because one, I'll do my warlord with them, and then I also have 15 wolf riders that were sitting there that I've actually removed because I'm getting ready to do a video series on how I strip my models, because basically I'm going to be taking them from fully painted the way I got them used to this state. And so that'll be, I'll either be putting that series up this week or next week, I mean this week or the week, or in a couple of weeks, just depending on how far I get with it this week. I probably can get it through it this week. It just depends whether I can get the video up. I usually take about a week or at least 5 days to strip models. I usually have them sitting in there for a bit, but I'll talk about that a little more later. Just going to pan back here. One of the things that really I got inspired to do was I purchased this a few weeks back, and it's Super Sculpty Firm. I typically sculpt in green stuff, and I use green stuff like an epoxy to do, you know, conversions and things like that. But I've been watching a gentleman's channel, and you know, I'm sorry that the name just escapes me because I watch so many people's channels, but he's actually a professional sculptor, and I'm going to put his name below with a link. And he's kind of inspired me to try using some clay to do some sculpting. He uses Fimo, I believe Fimo Classic. I couldn't find it locally easily, and I'd seen this Super Sculpty Firm, which I think they're basically bake clays, so you can work with them until you bake them. And I wanted to try working with some clay because although it's been many years, and I may have mentioned it, but I did a couple of semesters actually in high school and one in college in my early years when I was doing liberal arts of sculpting. And you know, it was actually pretty helpful because I learned from, you know, some pretty talented people. And although we're talking, I don't know, it's over 25 years ago. I mean, although we're talking a long time ago, some of those things you just sort of retain. And even when I worked with some green stuff, I mean, some of the ideas and things that I'd learned back then kind of just came back. It was kind of like riding a bicycle. Now, I didn't sculpt in miniature. It was actually in more of a larger scale that I was sculpting back then. But the ideas really do cross over, and so I've wanted to continue to work on my sculpting. It's something that I've been gradually doing over time with conversions. You know, I did a face I think it was last fall, on a musket and tomahawks French marine. But recently I've gotten inspired to try to do some sculpting projects, and I've had some in the wing that I've been wanting to do. And I have probably about 5 miniatures that I really want to do, and I want to sculpt miniatures that I can use in my armies for practice for a couple of reasons. I mean, the utility aspect, I can just, you know, use them in my armies and be creative and artistic, add some different dimensions to what I'm doing for my games. And it also allows me to emulate some of the other sculptors and what they've done to work with proportion. You know, sculpting from scratch, I think is, there are different levels to it, and I could try to just do my own scale and just do everything from my own imagination and measurement. And I actually think in some ways that would be harder. I want to try sculpting, you know, I want to do an Indian, a native from musket and tomahawks, and so I have an idea of, and I'm going to be able to, I want to use some of the Conquest Warlord miniatures as reference points for dimension. I know from what Tristan said on some of the French, he's going to be thinking, no, don't use those for reference. But I want, you know, I want to be able to match them, this particular miniature, to the natives that I have from Warlord, and so I'll be using some of them as reference points. But the next one I'm going to do is actually not going to be that one. I want to sculpt an orc war boss. I have a couple of reasons for that. One is I just have an idea in my mind for a particular miniature that I want to sculpt. So, you know, it's going to be a war boss, and I want it to be, you know, he's going to have sort of like a fur cape and most likely, I guess like a double ponytail, and in some ways I kind of want it to have a little bit of a what is it, the Hibernian, the Conan world sort of feel to it, and so I'm thinking, I'm not sure whether I'm going to do a spear. I'd like to do a spear, but I'm not sure about the difficulty level on that to start, and so I'm either going to do a shield and a big two-handed, or excuse me, not a shield, but him pointing with a two-handed choppa in his right hand, just holding it with his right hand, so like a two-handed weapon that he's just holding in his right hand, but he's pointing out sort of like as a war boss, directing, with sort of like a real barbarian sort of look to him. And I think it would be cool because, one, I've got that on my mind. I'm doing Orcs and Goblins and I'm working on that. But also, because of the musculature and the large features on the Orcs, it will allow me to work on muscle groups and to work on some of that definition. And it's not very subtle, it's very big. And so I think that would be helpful for me. And so I'm looking forward to trying that. Hopefully it doesn't go too far south early on, but it'll be a good opportunity. And I'm going to use some of the tips that I gotten from the video series that I'm putting in the link below, and part of that is, you know, in making the armature, but then using some green stuff as a foundation, but then working with clay, and so I'll see how that goes. So I'm sorry that you know, this month is actually going to be somewhat light on, or I should say the 30 days from when I kind of went on my first vacation out until I finish after next week. I'm going to be a little light on videos just because I'm going to be traveling so much. But I'm just giving you a little bit of an update on kind of what's on my mind and what I'm working on at the moment. And I hope everybody's enjoying their summer. Okay, talk to you later, guys. Take care.